shed new light on former President Trump's last year in office and his state of mind following the loss of last year's election. In an audio clip of an interview with the authors conducted with former president back in March for I Alone Can Fix It, which is in stores now and which is genuinely great. You should get it. Trump shares his thoughts on some of the events that transpired during the January 6th insurrection. Take a listen.
And it was a loving crowd, too, by the way. There was a lot of love. I've heard that from everybody. Many, many people have told me that was a loving crowd. In all fairness, the Capitol Police were ushering people in. The Capitol Police were very friendly. You know, they were hugging and kissing. You don't see that.
Man, joining us now to discuss, co-author Carol Leonnig. Carol, it's great to see you on set. There is so much scoopage in this book.
Oh.
I mean, every chapter has news, which is hard to do given the depth of coverage. But you sat down with him at Mar-a-Lago, and you've released the tapes, as we just heard. And one of the things that's stunning is just how deep the delusion seems to go. And you distill it really well at one point in the book. You say, many of Trump's failings can be explained by a simple truth. He cares more about himself than the country.
That's absolutely right, John. And, you know, it was a trend we found when we reported the first book. Phil and I kept seeing that basically his priorities were his political gain, not American democracy, not American safety, not American lives. It became pretty tragic and with huge consequences in 2020, a year when there was a real crisis. He did not have the toolkit for that because he was thinking about winning the day, winning the news cycle, short-term, my political fortune, re-election. And I think what Phil and I found the most shocking, even though we covered this in real time, the thing we found the most shocking as we interviewed more and more people is how panicked some of his most ardent supporters were about the peril he was willing to put America in, again, for his gain.
Yeah, and I would argue he put himself in peril by putting America in peril. It was odd that he couldn't see past that, even if he's motivated by what benefits him, to see that would benefit him. But you write about a November 13th meeting where Trump was he was upset because of the vaccine. He really wanted it approved before the election, and that's not what the FDA ended up doing. So he was upset that the emergency use authorization wasn't given until after Election Day. And he said this about face masks. He said, I can't hear you when you talk through those things. I hate those things, meaning through masks. Mr. President, they work, Azar said. The evidence is conclusive that they work. He described data showing that at 1 meter distance between two people both wearing masks, the chance of infection was reduced by 72%. Really, Trump asked. He genuinely sounded surprised. Yes, Azar said. Trump pondered this for a moment. Well, just be sure to take it off when you go to the microphone, he said. It looks silly. This is not the beginning of the pandemic, Carol.
No, we are talking, Brianna, in the fall of 2020, when more than 200,000 Americans have died, when the research is so consistent and proven that masks stop and slow the transmission, right? It's through droplets through your nose. And from our reporting, the health secretary, Alex Azar, feels like he's on an extended comedic loop because he keeps telling the president masks work. And this is the second time, the example you just gave, the second time that Trump says, really? They work? Are you kidding? It's almost as if certain information that he doesn't want to hear doesn't get through.
Yeah, it's almost like that. So let me ask you about a case where certain information he didn't want to hear led to a crisis in our democracy. You speak about how his staffers, people who are loyal to him or try to be, are deeply concerned about what he's doing democracy through the big lie. But his supporters on the streets don't know that. They don't have that perspective. As the attack on the Capitol is occurring, what is Trump's state of mind? What is the feeling inside the White House?
You know, it's amazing because we all lived it. We're in journalism, and America lived it through TV. Mm-hmm. And he is in his dining room off the Oval Office watching it and almost giddy because, I mean, he does watch a lot of TV, but here he is seeing thousands of his supporters basically trample up to the steps, break through barricades, all rallying for him to try to stop the certification of the election for Joe Biden. And he feels really supported and emboldened by that. And again, giddy. Keep in mind that when these people are, regardless of their intention, when they are storming the Capitol and going through those barricades, they're committing a crime.
Yeah.
They're pushing past police who are trying to hold them back. This is before they breach the Capitol. But what Trump then realizes is, oops, shots are fired. There are reports on the news within a half hour of this. And he, according to our sources, says, oh, crap. And it isn't, oh, crap, I've got to do something. It's, this doesn't look so good anymore.
For him.
The optics are bad for him.
The optics are bad. That is the consistent, important priority for the president at that time. And it takes, though, 2 hours for a series of aides, including his daughter, Ivanka Trump, and his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, to get the president to get it right about calling off the dogs, right? To get people to realize this violence has to stop. The president has to say something, but he is the last person to realize what is required and what he needs to say.
It is illuminating, and it is incredible. You also talk about how Trump reflects on his presidency, which I think is very interesting. He said, in a certain way, I had 2 presidencies.
I love this one.
He said, in the first, when the economy was roaring, Trump argued that he had been unbeatable. I think it would be hard if George Washington came back from the dead and he chose Abraham Lincoln as his vice president. I think it would have been very hard for them to beat me, Trump said. Then he lamented, came his second presidency. The pandemic killed his chances. That is, those are some people to compare yourself to.
It's just the idea that he's talking to you like, if I could have a wrestling match with a reanimated Washington and Lincoln, that'd be tough. I mean, what kind of mind?
Well, it's so, I love the passage you read because our jaws were also dropping on the floor as he said this. And the reason is not making fun of him, not mocking a former president, but most American historians have concluded that this presidency was one of the most tragic. And so for him to say that he could beat Washington teamed up with Lincoln is pretty striking. Also, I love this, Brianna, that this emphasis on this moment because he sees himself as a victim of COVID. Mm-hmm. You know, I had 2 presidencies. I had this really big burden instead of seeing Americans died, Americans suffered. And his own kitchen cabinet and Sirius cabinet feel that he made it worse.
Yeah.
Well, all signs point to yes, as the 8-ball would say. I want to ask you, every day we have new information about the administration coming out. It's kind of a moving target. You may have to do different editions of this book. But one of the things we're finding out is more information about the Kavanaugh hearings. Brett Kavanaugh appointed to the court by the president, jump ball moment. President decides to stick by him, but the FBI gets 4,500 pieces of information from the public.
Tips, yeah.
According to new CNN reporting. Some of them are brought onto the White House. What is your read on that particular chapter and this new information about the FBI passing on this information to the White House about a Supreme Court nominee, now Justice?
It's stunning, but one thing that we need to keep in mind as well, it's amazing reporting, is the president was actively working with Mitch McConnell to make sure that FBI investigation was limited, that it didn't go any further, because they didn't need to want to know anything else. They needed this confirmation. And now let's fast forward to the interview that Phil and I did with the former president in Mar-a-Lago. He's disappointed with Kavanaugh. He thought Kavanaugh should have been by his side and concluded that the election was rigged. So even though he did everything he could to stop information coming out, any more bloopers, any more bad information, any more reports about women and Kavanaugh or beer and Kavanaugh, now he's actually disappointed in this judge and disappointed in all the Supreme Court justices he appointed. They didn't deliver for him, and that's what he expected.
Real loyalty is overturning an election.
Correct.
Carol, it's a phenomenal book. Great reporting, as always, and it's wonderful to see you on Senate News.
Thank you guys for such good questions.
No, you are welcome.
All right. We have a fresh wave of American officials suffering from symptoms consistent with the mysterious Havana syndrome.